Hey guys, what time is it at your place? Another sleepless night, huh? Okay, stay here with me and you'll sleep like you never slept before. Tonight we're going to be immersed in the dirty, messy world of medieval times. A life so harsh you'll want to escape within the first 10 seconds. I promise you, this is not a playground for the faint-hearted, but if you make it through the first minute, the rest of the journey will be a blast. Forget the gleaming swords of knights or the velvet gowns of ladies in tapestries. We're not here for Hollywood's polished version of the Middle Ages with its candlelit banquets and heroic quests. Nope, we're trudging through the muck to shine a light on the folks who kept medieval heads from looking like abandoned bird nests. The barbers. We're going to live a day in their shoes, from the crack of dawn to the flicker of the last ember, unravelling the sweaty, smelly truth about medieval hair. So, grab a blanket, maybe grab a drink, then hit that like button if you're ready for a wild ride, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I'd love to know where my viewers are around the world. Now, let your imagination run wild, and let's get started. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1275 in a creaky wooden shack on the outskirts of a muddy English market town called York. The good news? You're still breathing, and the rats haven't nibbled your toes yet. The bad news? You're a barber, and your day is about to be a grueling slog through a jungle of greasy, lice-infested hair. Look around first. Your bed is a lumpy sack of straw, damp from last night's drizzle that leaked through the thatched roof. The blanket, a scratchy wool slab, smells like it's been dragged through a pigsty and left to fester. You roll over, and the dirt floor greets your bare feet with a cold, gritty slap, like stepping on a soggy loaf of bread. The air is thick with smoke from the dying hearth, mixed with the sour tang of your neighbour's goat, which is probably plotting to eat your only pair of shoes. Outside, the church bell clangs, a relentless reminder that dawn doesn't care if you're tired. You're 29, which is basically 1 foot in the grave in medieval terms, and your back pops like a twig snapping under a cartwheel. Welcome to your life, where every day is a battle against knots, stench, and the ever-present threat of a mob calling you a sorcerer. You stumble to your feet. Look! Your home is a single room, shared with your wife, Marjorie, 2 kids who never stop yelling, and a scrawny dog that's more interested in your bread than your affection. No windows, just slivers of grey light sneaking through cracks in the walls, painting the room in shades of gloom. You pull on your only tunic, a faded linen rag that's more stain than fabric, held together by a rope belt that's fraying faster than your patience. Shoes, just a pair of leather scraps, stitched so poorly they're basically glorified socks. You splash your face with water from a wooden bucket, cold, murky, with a suspicious green film that might be algae or something worse. Breakfast is a chunk of rye bread, hard as a blacksmith's anvil, and a gulp of small beer, because drinking water is like playing dice with the plague. Your breath smells like a mix of stale ale and despair. But there's no time to care. The market square is waking up and your clients are waiting, their hair as wild as their tempers. You grab your tools, a pathetic collection that could make a grown man weep, a pair of iron shears, rusted and duller than a monk's sermon, a wooden comb missing half its teeth, like a grin from a drunken brawler, and a clay pot of rosemary-infused water that's supposed to promote hair growth, but mostly just smells like a wet forest. You trudge to your shop, a rickety stall in York's Market Square, open to the wind, rain and the stench of the nearby tanner's vats. The square is a chaos of noise, vendors hawking cabbages, dogs barking, and the splash of someone dumping a chamber pot into the street. You sweep the dirt floor with a twig broom, lay out a tattered cloth to catch hair clippings, and mutter a quick prayer that the wind doesn't blow it all into your eyes. Why the cloth? Because hair isn't just hair in 1275. A stray lock could be snatched by a cunning woman for a love potion or a curse to make a man's bits shrivel. You're not superstitious, but you're not about to tempt fate either. You burn the clippings at day's end, just to be safe. Your first customer shuffles in, a frayman named Wulfric, a miller who smells like flour, sweat, and the kind of ale that could strip paint. He wants the Saxon cut, shaved sides, a square patch on top, short enough to keep the mill dust out, but long enough to prove he's not a slave. Simple, right? Not when his hair is a matted nest, crawling with lice that rustle like leaves in a breeze. You dip your comb in the rosemary water, hoping it'll mask the stench, and start hacking with your shears. The blades tug more than they cut, each snip pulling a wince from Wulfric. "Careful, barber," he growls, "or I'll shave your head with my millstone." You force a laugh, but your stomach twists. Nobody jokes about heads when the town square hosts executions every other week. You work fast, scraping the sides of his head with a blunt razor that's more likely to tear skin than hair. The Saxon cut is practical, but it's also a social signal. Short hair screams "I work for a living," while long locks are for knights and nobles who don't have to worry about getting their hair caught in a plough. Next up is a merchant's wife, Beatrice, who wants her hair braided and tucked under a wimple to flaunt her married status. Her hair is a greasy tangle, untouched by a comb for weeks, and smells like it's been marinating in pottage. Blonde is the holy grail of medieval beauty, but Beatrice's dull brown locks are about as radiant as a mud puddle. You offer to lighten them with a paste of henna, eggs, and calf kidneys, a recipe you got from a shady peddler who swore it worked miracles. Does it? Barely. Does it smell like a slaughterhouse? Oh yes. Beatrice grimaces but agrees, because blonde hair is a flex, a way to outshine the baker's wife at Sunday Mass. You slather the paste on, your fingers slick with grease and start braiding. Her hair is so heavy it makes your wrists ache, but you weave it into tight plaits, pinning them up with bone pins that look like they've seen better days. The wimple, a heavy cloth that covers her head and neck, goes on last, turning her into a walking linen fortress. She hands you a halfpenny and a scowl, as if you're the one who invented sweat. The morning rolls on, and the square becomes a circus. Your stall is swamped with clients, each one demanding a style that screams their place in the pecking order. A ploughman named Tom wants a quick trim, just short enough to keep the dirt out of his eyes. His hair is caked with mud and straw, and you swear you see a beetle scuttle out as you comb. You give him the freeman's cut, short at the back and sides, with a fringe that's more practical than pretty. It's a style for men who toil, a badge of labour that says, "I'm not a noble, but I'm not a slave either." Tom grumbles about the price, a farthing, but pays up and shuffles off. Then comes Brother Anselm, a monk who needs his tonsure refreshed. The tonsure is a nightmare job, shaving a perfect circle on the crown to mimic Christ's crown of thorns, leaving a ring of hair around it like a halo gone wrong. Anselm's scalp is flaky, his hair thin and brittle, and he spends the whole time lecturing you about vanity. "Hair is a temptation," he drones, as you scrape away with a razor that's more rust than blade. You nod, biting your tongue, because arguing with a monk is a fast track to the cemetery. The tonsure has to be precise, one uneven patch, and you're accused of mocking the church. You squint in the dim light, your hands trembling from the cold, and finish the job. Anselm inspects his head with a polished bronze mirror, mutters a blessing, and leaves without paying. Monks don't pay, they just pray for your soul, which is about as useful as a hole in your tunic. By noon, you're sweating through your tunic, despite the chill in the air. Your next client is a young squire, Ralph, who's all swagger and no coin. He wants the warrior cut, inspired by the Knights Templar. Long hair braided tight for combat, with shaved sides to show purity and commitment. His hair is thick, matted, and smells like he's been sleeping in a stable. Braiding it is like wrestling a pig. Your fingers cramp, your shoulders burn, and Ralph keeps squirming, boasting about battles he's never seen. "Make it quick," he snaps, as if you're the one slowing things down. You weave his hair into tight plaits, each one a small victory, and shave the sides with a blade that's begging for retirement. The warrior cut is a status symbol, a nod to the knights who wear their long hair as a badge of honour, but it's also practical. Braids keep hair out of the face during a fight, and nobody wants to die because a stray lock got caught in their helmet. As the sun climbs higher, you get a parade of oddballs. A baker's apprentice wants the bowl cut, a style that's exactly what it sounds like. Hair clipped to look like an upside-down bowl was plopped on the head. It's popular among men who want to look neat but not noble. Think King Henry V, but without the crown or the charisma. The baker's boy, a gangly kid named Simon, has hair so oily it could grease a cartwheel. You hack away, the shears squeaking with every cut, and brush the hair upward to give it that signature rounded look. Simon fidgets, complaining about the itch, but you're too busy dodging lice to care. The bowl cut is a pain to get right, too short, and he looks like a monk. Too long, and he's a laughingstock. You finish, and he tosses you a crust of bread as payment. Bread's better than nothing. but it's stale enough to break a tooth. Then there's a widow Maud who wants her hair loose but tidy, a delicate balance since loose hair screams unmarried virgin and invites gossip. Her greying locks are brittle, snapping under your comb, and she smells faintly of onions and sorrow. You brush gently, weaving her hair into a loose braid that's modest but not matronly. Widows walk a tightrope, too plain, and they're pitied, too fancy, and they're suspected of chasing a new husband. Maud hums a sad tune as you work, her fingers twisting a scrap of linen she carries everywhere, a memento of her late husband. You don't ask questions. Barbers hear everything, but say nothing. The afternoon brings a noble's page, a boy of 14 named Cedric, who's obsessed with the page boy cut, shoulder-length hair with a straight fringe, curled inward at the ends to frame his face like a cherub. It's a style for young men climbing the social ladder, a nod to courtly fashion without stepping on noble toes. Cedric's hair is fine but tangled, and he whines every time you tug a knot. You use a hot iron, heated over a small brazier, to curl the ends, praying you don't burn his scalp. The iron smells like charred wood, and the heat makes your hands sweat. Cedric prattles about the Lord's new falcon, but you're too focused on not setting his head on fire. When you're done, he preens in your bronze mirror, tosses you a clipped penny, and struts off like he owns the town. Now, let's talk about the truly weird styles. Some women come in asking for the cloud bun, a Tang dynasty import that's trickled into Europe via merchants and crusaders. It's a high, twisted bun that sits like a puff of dough on the head, often adorned with flowers or cheap beads. It's a nightmare to create. Hair has to be teased, pinned, and prayed over to stay upright. One client, a tanner's daughter named Elin, demands it for a feast, hoping to catch a suitor's eye. Her hair is coarse and greasy, and you spend an hour twisting it into shape, your fingers sticky with beeswax you bought at a ruinous price. The result looks like a lopsided loaf, but Elin beams, convinced she's the Empress of York. You don't tell her the bun's already sagging. She'll find out at the feast. Then there's the gazing god's bun, another Eastern style that's even more absurd. It's a towering bun shaped like a teardrop, with the sides framing the face to draw the god's eyes. You've only done it once, for a merchant's wife who'd travelled to Byzantium and came back with ideas above her station. It took 2 hours, a dozen bone pins, and a prayer to every saint you know. The bun wobbled like a drunk on a horse, and she paid you in insults instead of coin. You swore never again, but you know someone else will ask for it eventually. People love their status symbols, even if they look ridiculous. Men aren't immune to weirdness either. Some warriors demand the Norseman cut, inspired by Viking raiders, long hair shaved at the sides with the top plaited into intricate braids or tied into a messy bun. It's a style that screams, "I pillage for fun," but it's a pain to maintain. You've seen men with beads and bone charms woven into their braids, each one a trophy from a raid or a gift from a lover. Shaving the sides is tricky. One slip, and you're explaining to a hulking warrior why he looks like a plucked chicken. You've learned to keep a jug of ale handy to calm their nerves. And don't get me started on beards. Viking-style beards, long and braided with beads, are popular among men who fancy themselves warriors. You spend half your day untangling them, dodging the smell of stale mead and worse. The church hates beards too. Pagan, they say, but nobody tells a bearded man he looks like a goat to his face. You trim, braid, and pray they don't notice the lice you're combing out. One client, a blacksmith named Harold, insists on a beard ring, a metal hoop woven into his whiskers. It looks impressive, but catches on everything, and you're not surprised when he comes back a week later with it tangled in a knot the size of a fist. The weirdest styles keep you on your toes. Some women demand the snood bun, a netted style where hair is gathered into a bag-like net at the back of the head, studded with beads that clink annoyingly as they walk. It's a status symbol for wealthy women, but it's a nightmare to create. Hair slips, nets tear, and your fingers get caught in the threads. You did one for a goldsmith's wife last month, and it took so long you missed supper. Then there's the high hairline, where women pluck their foreheads to create a smooth, lofty brow. It's painful, tedious, and you're the one holding the tweezers, dodging their winces and curses. Men aren't spared. Some ask for the Merovingian mane, a Frankish style where hair is left long and loose, never cut, to show power. It's a tangled mess, and you spend hours combing out knots while they lecture you about their lineage. Your tools are your biggest enemy. The shears are heavy, rusted, and about as sharp as a butter churn. Every cut feels like sawing through rope. The comb, carved from bone, snaps if you push too hard. For fancy styles, you might use a bone needle to thread braids or a hot iron to curl hair, but that's a luxury most can't afford. Hair dye is a gamble. Henna and saffron cost more than your weekly earnings, and the results are unpredictable. You once tried a dye that promised golden locks but delivered a sickly green. The client, a weaver's wife, screamed for an hour and refused to pay. You've stuck to rosemary water ever since, even if it does nothing but make your hands smell like a hedge. The church is another headache. They've got opinions on everything, and hair is their favourite soapbox. Long hair on men? Barbaric and effeminate, a sin against God. Loose hair on women? A one-way ticket to hell, advertising her as a temptress. You've seen women shunned for a single loose strand, their reputations ruined faster than you can say wimple. You're caught in the middle, trying to please priests who want modesty and nobles who want flair. One wrong cut, and you're accused of vanity, or worse, witchcraft. Hair has power, they say, and you're the one holding the shears. Every day, you walk a tightrope between pleasing your clients and dodging the church's wrath. By dusk, your arms are screaming, your hands are sticky with grease, and your stall is a battlefield of hair clippings and spilled rosemary water. You've cut hair for peasants, monks, squires, and widows, each one grumbling about the price or the style. You've dodged accusations of sorcery. Someone's always convinced you're collecting hair for spells. You're not, but good luck convincing a mob with torches. You sweep up, burn the hair to avoid trouble, and trudge home, your pouch jingling with a handful of farthings and a clipped penny. It's barely enough for bread and ale, but it's something. Your day's done, but tomorrow looms, another round of snips, smells, and survival. Let's pause for a moment, because being a barber isn't just about cutting hair. It's about surviving the people you cut it for. You're a listener, a keeper of secrets, the town's unofficial therapist. The market square is a gossip mill, and your stall is its hub. Wulfric whispers about the Lord's new steward who's skimming the grain taxes. Beatrice spills that the baker's wife was seen praying at a crossroads. Suspicious, if you ask the priest. Brother Anselm mutters about a monk caught smuggling apples, and Rafe brags about a girl who laughed at his new braids. You nod, smile, and keep your mouth shut. Why? Because gossip is a currency more valuable than silver, but it's also a noose. One wrong word, and you're the one in the pillory, with the town throwing rotten cabbage at your head. You've heard it all. Affairs, thefts, whispers of rebellion. You store it away, locked tight behind your teeth, because knowledge is the only power you've got. At home, your wife Marjorie is waiting, braiding your daughter's hair by the firelight. The pottage is bubbling, a thin sludge of barley, turnips, and a carrot that's seen better days. It tastes like disappointment, but it's warm, and that's a small mercy. Marjorie knows your struggles. The sore hands, the aching back, the constant fear of a bad cut ruining your name. She doesn't ask about your day. She's lived it through you 1,000 times. Your kids, a boy of 7 and a girl of 5, play with a straw doll, giggling as the dog tries to steal it. You watch them, and a flicker of pride sparks in your chest. You're no knight, no scholar, but you keep York's heads tidy. You make monks look holy, wives look respectable, squires look brave. It's not glory, but it's yours. Your dreams are modest, worn thin like your tunic. Maybe you'll afford a new pair of shears sharp enough to glide through hair instead of yanking it. Maybe you'll save enough to move to London, where merchants pay in silver and don't haggle over a farthing. Or maybe you'll just make it through another year without the plague, a bad harvest, or a noble's whim sending you to the stocks. You don't dream of castles or crowns. Those are for fools who think life is fair. You dream of a warm hearth, a full belly, and a day when your hands don't ache. But let's talk about the real grit. The challenges that make being a barber feel like juggling torches in a windstorm. Every cut is a gamble. Clip a noble's hair too short, and you're out of work. Too long, and you're accused of vanity, a sin that could land you in a sermon or worse. Women's hair is a minefield. One loose strand and she's branded a harlot. Too many pins and she's vain. You've seen women shunned for less, their lives unravelling over a braid gone wrong. Men aren't easier. The church calls long hair effeminate. but knights wear it long to flex their status. You're stuck pleasing both, your shears dancing between modesty and pride. Then there's the physical toll. Your hands cramp from gripping those cursed shears. Your fingers raw from rosemary water that stings like a wasp. Your back screams from hours bent over clients, and your eyes burn from squinting in the dim light of your stool. Summer turns your shop into an oven, sweat dripping into your eyes as you braid. Winter is worse, your fingers go numb, the cold biting through your thin tunic, and the wind scatters your clippings like snow. Rain soaks your tools, rusting them faster than you can afford to replace them. You work through it all because stopping means no bread, no ale, no life. The church's rules are a constant thorn. They've banned dyed hair, calling it a tool of prostitutes, but women beg for it anyway, whispering about saffron and gorse flowers like it's a secret rebellion. You've mixed dyes in secret, your hands stained yellow for days, knowing one slip could get you accused of aiding sin. Witches are another worry. Everyone thinks hair has magic, and you're the one collecting it. You burn every clipping, but the rumours persist. Last year, a barber in the next town was flogged for selling hair to a cunning woman. You keep your head down, your fire hot, and your prayers loud. Yet through it all, you endure. You've learned to steady your hand when a client squirms, to smile through their complaints, to weave a braid so tight it lasts a week. You've built alliances. Wulfric slips you extra grain when the harvest is good, Beatrice shares her herbs, and even Brother Anselm offers a blessing now and then. These small bonds are your lifeline, threads of trust in a world that chews up trust and spits it out. As night falls in another day, you drag yourself home, your body aching like you've been trampled by a horse. The market square is quiet now, the vendors gone, the street a river of mud, and worse. You collapse onto your straw bed, the mattress poking your ribs like an angry creditor. Marjorie is asleep, her breath soft against the crackle of the fire. The kids are curled up with the dog, who's finally stopped chewing your shoes. You pull the blanket tight, its wool scratching your skin, and stare at the embers. They glow like tiny suns, flickering with the stubborn hope that keeps you going. Your hands throb, your back groans, but you're alive. Another day done, another day waiting. You're a barber, invisible but essential, shaping the heads and hearts of a town that barely knows your name. You close your eyes, dreaming of sharp shears and a world where hair doesn't smell like despair. The barbers of 1275 were the silent sculptors of their world, their shears carving out identities in a society obsessed with status. They toiled in the shadows of lords and priests, their hands raw, their names forgotten, but their work was the thread that stitched the town together. From the Saxon cut to the cloud bun, every style told a story of labour, faith, or defiance. They faced the church's wrath, the town's gossip, and the endless grind of dull tools. Yet they kept going, their resilience as sharp as their blades should have been. As the stars burn over York, the town sleeps, its heads neatly trimmed, its secrets safely kept. All because of the barbers who dared to wield the shears. All right, you've survived a day as a medieval barber, dodging lice, dull shears, and the church side-eye. But we're not done yet. The fire's still crackling, and tonight we're diving deeper into the gritty, colourful world of medieval beauty. Specifically, the unsung heroes who slapped on the face paint and made medieval folks look less like they just crawled out of a ditch. Welcome to the life of a medieval makeup artist, or as close as they got in 1290, when cosmetic meant questionable pastes, crushed bugs, and a whole lot of nerve. These folks weren't just dabbing on blush, they were navigating a minefield of social rules and religious bans. We're going to walk through a day in their world, from the moment you wake up to the last smudge of ochre, exploring the wild, weird, and downright dangerous art of medieval beauty. So, hit that like button if you're ready for another plunge into the Middle Ages, and drop a comment saying, "What time is it now?" Let's dive in. Congratulations! You jolt awake in 1290, sprawled on a sagging straw pallet in a crooked shack tucked behind Bristol's fish market. Good news? You're still breathing. Bad news? So are the fleas. You're a makeup artist in a town that smells like cod, sweat, and sin. Check around. Your bed's a lumpy mess of straw and old rushes, damp from a roof that leaks like a sieve. The blanket, A woolen slab stiff with grime scratches like it's got a personal grudge. The dirt floor kisses your bare feet with a cold, slimy chill, like stepping into a puddle of forgotten stew. The air's thick with the reek of fish guts from the market, mingling with the faint char of last night's fire. Outside, the church bell tolls, a bossy clang that says dawn's here and you'd better hustle. You're 27, which is basically one bad cough from the grave, and your back creaks like a ship's mast in a storm. Welcome to your life, where every day is a high-stakes game of painting faces, dodging sermons, and praying your hands don't shake when the stakes are highest. You stagger upright, scratching an itch that's either fleas, lice, or your skin's desperate cry for mercy. Your hut's a single, cramped room, shared with your cousin Maud, who's muttering curses at the fire for refusing to catch, and a scrawny tabby named Pike, who's eyeing your bread like it's a plump rat. No windows, just slivers of grey light seeping through wattle and daub walls, patched with crumbling mud and sagging like your hopes. The shadows cast make the place look like a dungeon from a monk's fever dream. The floor a slick mix of dirt, straw, and spilled ale, sticking to your soles like a second skin. You tug on your only dress, a faded linen shift so stained with berry juice, charcoal, wax, and fish oil it's a patchwork of your trade's battles. Cinched with a hemp cord fraying faster than your patience after a long day. Shoes? Just leather scraps, stitched with sinew, thin as a beggar's luck, offering as much comfort as walking on oyster shells or market cobbles. You splash your face with water from a cracked wooden bucket, icy, murky, with a green film that's either algae or the town's finest sewage, smelling like a drowned fish left to rot. Breakfast is a wedge of rye bread, hard as a blacksmith's anvil, tearing at your gums, and a gulp of small beer, weak and sour but safer than water, which is a dice roll with death in these streets. Your breath's a rancid blend of stale malt, old fish, and despair. But there's no time to sulk. The market's stirring, its shouts and stinks clawing through the walls, and your clients are waiting, their faces as dull as mud and twice as desperate for a spark of radiance. Before you head out, let's unravel the beauty standards of 1290, because looking fair isn't just vanity, it's a social contract, a status flex, and a tightrope walk over society's judgment. With the church's whip cracking overhead, the ideal face is a billboard of wealth, purity, and God's favour. Every feature a silent shout of your place in the town's pecking order. Skin's the crown jewel. It must be pale as fresh snow, translucent as a saint's veil. Untouched by sun, only nobles or rich merchants' wives can afford to stay indoors, weaving or praying. So pale skin is a badge of leisure, a boast that you don't gut fish, plough fields, or hawk wares in the market's glare. Peasant women, tanned or ruddy from labour, crave that ghostly glow to fake a life above their station. Their faces a canvas of ambition you paint with poison and prayers. Blemishes, pockmarks from smallpox, scars from kitchen burns, freckles from summer, are the devil's graffiti, signs of sin, sickness, or cursed blood. You slather on pastes to bury them, praying the cracks don't betray the lie, knowing a single flaw could spark whispers of witchcraft or divine disfavour. Moist, dewy skin, glistening like morning mist on a meadow, signals youth and health, but the town's smoky air, greasy barley-heavy diets, and constant damp make it a fantasy. You mix oils and waxes to fake that glow, knowing it'll slide off by noon, leaving cheeks as dry as a monk's sermon. Eyes are the soul's windows, and they'd better be divine. Large, almond-shaped eyes, bright and clear as a summer stream, are the gold standard, framed by lashes long and dark enough to flutter like a prayer to the Virgin Mary. Brown or hazel eyes dominate the town's muddy streets, but blue or green are heavenly, a nod to Mary's grace, or noble blood from some long-ago Norman lord. You rim them with kohl to make them pop, stretching small, tired eyes to almond glory. But you keep it subtle. The church calls bold eyes a harlot's lure, a trap for men's souls. Eyebrows are a drama unto themselves. High, arched and thick, they mimic cathedral vaults or the curve of a noble's bow, signalling youth, vigour and status. Thin or sparse brows scream age, illness or low birth, so you paint them with charcoal, praying they don't smudge in the market's chaos or sweat off during a feast. Women pluck their foreheads to raise the brow line, creating a lofty, smooth expanse that's pure nobility. But the pain makes them curse, and you're the one dodging their glares when the skin reddens like a slapped cheek. The nose is a noble's privilege. Small, straight, delicate, like a carved saint's in a church window. Broad, crooked or red noses common among fishwives, ploughmen or ale-soaked tanners mark labour and vice, so you use shadows to slim them, a trick you gleaned from a Genoese trader's tales of courtly painters in far-off Italy. You can't reshape bone, but a dab of chalk here, a smudge of ochre there, turning a peasant's snout into a lady's grace. Lips are a whisper of sin and status. Small, rosebud lips, red as fresh blood or a summer berry, are the ideal, curved in a meek, holy smile that promises purity. Full lips, plump and bold, are a harlot's mark, too sensual for God's flock, so you paint them smaller, shaping thin lips to rosebud perfection with a quill's tip, keeping the colour soft to dodge priestly wrath. The mouth should never gape. Teeth, if they show, must be white and even, but most clients are yellow, chipped or missing, so you coach them to smile small. Lips closed like a saint's secret, hiding the rot within. Hair, though not your domain, frames the face like a halo or a crown. Blonde or golden hair, long and silky as spun gold, is heaven's hue, a mark of angels or Viking blood, prized by nobles and mimicked by merchants' wives with coin to spare. Brunettes, like Maud, beg for saffron washes or henna to fake it, but the stench of the dyes, pungent as a tanner's yard, and the cost keep most brown, their locks braided, coiled, or hidden under wimples and nets for modesty's sake. The church demands women cover their hair. Loose locks are a temptress's trap, luring men to lust, so wimples rule the streets. But your clients sneak loose strands to flaunt youth or defiance, a rebellion you aid with your pigments. Men's hair, short for peasants, longer for knights or clerks, must be neat, framing the face without stealing the show, often slicked with grease to tame it, smelling faintly of lard or ale. Skincare, Duongda, is a relentless war against time, filth and fate, a battle you profit from as much as you paint. Nobles swear by rosewater, milk baths and honey masks to keep skin soft and dewy, their faces glowing like illuminated manuscripts. But your clients, fishwives, bakers, weavers, make do with herb infusions boiled in pots that double for pottage. Chamomile to soothe redness, comfrey for scars, nettle for grease, you sell beauty waters, vinegar steeped with lavender, sage or thyme, which stings like a wasp's kiss but cleans grime and fish oil from weathered cheeks. Wealthy women rub almond oil, costly as a week's bread, to fake that moist glow, while peasants use lard, cheap and rancid, leaving them smelling like a butcher's stall and slick as a gutted eel. Acne, blamed on bad blood, demons or a witch's curse, is fought with witch hazel poultices, their bitter scent lingering on your hands. In desperate huts, you've seen urine smeared to fade pimples, a practice you dodge but don't judge. Survival trumps pride. Wrinkles, age's betrayal, are battled with egg-white masks that tighten skin but crack like your dreams, or goose fat rubbed in at night, leaving faces shiny and beds reeking. Blackheads and boils are lanced with bone needles, a job you avoid when you can. Your quills are for painting, not popping, but you sell nettle brews to mask the stench of infection. Every client dreams of flawless, noble skin, but the town's smoke, fleas and barley-heavy diets make it a fantasy you paint over with lead, chalk, and whispered prayers. You grab your tools, a pitiful arsenal that could make a saint curse, a chipped earthenware bowl leaking like a traitor's heart, a wooden spoon crusted with dyes no lie can scour, a bundle of goose quills fraying like a molting swan, and a leather pouch stuffed with ingredients from a witch's fever dream. White lead, cochineal beetles, ochre, chalk, madder root, charcoal, and a pinch of saffron you guard like a king's ransom. You trudge to your stall, a wobbly table under a tattered canvas awning in the market square, squeezed between a fishmonger's reek and a butcher hacking at a pig's carcass, blood splattering your cloth like a grim prophecy. The air's a noxious stew, rotting cod, offal, dung, and the open ditch that's the town's sewer, flowing like a river of regret through the cobbles. You spread a threadbare cloth, patched and stained, to keep your tools from sliding into the muck, light a clay brazier to warm your pastes, and whisper a prayer to St. Lucy, patron of sight, because you'll need eagle eyes to navigate this chaos. Why the caution? In 1290, makeup isn't just art, it's a social signal, a rebellion, a potential sin. One wrong dab, and you're accused of luring men to lust, brewing potions, or defying God's creation. You choke on fish fumes, wipe sweat from your brow with a sleeve stiff with dye, and brace for the onslaught of faces hungry for beauty. Your first client is Agnes, a fishmonger's wife who wants an everyday look to outshine her rival selling herrings across the square. Every day means pale skin to fake wealth, rosy cheeks for health, kohl-rimmed eyes for soulful depth, brows arched like a noble's, lips rosebud meek, and a nose slim to grace. Agnes's face is weathered, her cheeks rough from years gutting cod, her nose broad and red from ale, her eyes small and brown, her brows patchy, her lips chapped and thin. You start with white lead paste, a thick, chalky sludge that gives her the ghostly glow of a merchant's wife. It's poison, seeping into your tingling fingers, twisting your stomach like a bad oyster. But she craves the status. Pale skin screams, "I don't toil." You smooth it with a quill, dodging cracks that betray the lie, hiding pockmarks from a childhood fever that left her face a map of survival. To blush, you crush cochineal beetles into a scarlet paste, earthy and sharp as wet soil, dabbing it high on her cheeks for a maiden's flush, round and youthful to fake her lost years. Her eyes get charcoal coal, mixed with pork fat, greasy and bacon-scented, smudged to stretch them almond-like, large and holy, making her brown gaze seem deeper, saintly. Her brows, thin as a beggar's luck, get charcoal to arch them high, framing her face like a cathedral's vault, a noble's pride. Her lips, cracked and barely there, get madder root dye, a soft red shaped into a rosebud, meek to dodge priestly glares hiding her ale-stained teeth. You slim her nose with chalk shadows, a subtle trick to fake a noble's grace. Brushing ochre to soften its ruddy glow, she squints at her reflection in your polished bronze disc, its surface scratched but true, and nods, her eyes gleaming with hope or defiance. She tosses you a farthing and a fish head, slimy and stinking, muttering, "Don't make me a whore," because the church calls painted faces sin, and her rival's tongue is sharper than your quills. You nod, heart pounding like a war drum, knowing one friar's glance could shatter your stall for good. The market erupts into chaos as the sun climbs, a riot of shouts and stinks, fishmongers bellowing, "Fresh cod! Ha'penny a pound!" Carts splashing through muck, their wheels creaking like tortured souls, gulls screeching like demons loosed from hell, and the stench of fish, dung and smoke choking the air like a plague's breath. Your next client is Thomas, a young clerk headed to a merchant's feast, desperate for a courtly flush to pass among the rich, his ambition burning brighter than your brazier. Men paint too, especially lads like Thomas, pale from hunching over ledgers in a guild hall's gloom, his eyes small and grey, brows sparse, lips thin, nose crooked from a tavern brawl, teeth yellow when he grins. You mix ochre and rosewater for a ruddy glow, brushing it onto his cheeks and lips to fake health, keeping it subtle. The church calls painted men effeminate goats. A sin worse than theft. His eyes get charcoal smudged at the corners, a trick you learn from a Genoese trader's tales of Italian courts, stretching them toward almond glory, making his grey gaze bold, almost noble. His brows, faint as a whisper, get darkened with charcoal to arch high, signalling status, framing his face like a knight's helm. His lips, barely there, get berry juice, a soft red to dodge sin's taint, shaped into a meek curve that hides his crooked teeth. You shadow his nose with chalk and ochre to slim its crook, faking a noble's grace, careful not to overdo it lest his master mock him. He fidgets, muttering about a girl at the feast, his breath reeking of onions and ambition, his hands twitching like he's already counting his future coin. You nod, keeping your quill steady, your hand stained like a painter's palette gone mad, reds and blacks bleeding into cracked skin. He pays with a clipped penny, half its value shaved off by some cheating merchant, and a nervous grin, strutting off to chase dreams you'll never touch, his painted face a fragile mask against the feast's harsh eyes. By noon your stall's a battlefield, pigment spilled across your cloth like a drunk's wine, quills frayed and shedding feathers, fish stench clinging to your skin like a curse, your brazier's smoke stinging your eyes until they water like you're weeping for your own life. Joan, a baker's wife, shuffles up, her hands flour-dusted and trembling, wanting a wedding look for her daughter's nuptials tomorrow. Brides must be pure, radiant, rich, skin pale as snow, cheeks pink as dawn, eyes holy, brows soaring, lips rosebud small, nose delicate, a vision of virginity, even if the town whispers otherwise. Jones brought a scrap of the bride's veil, fine linen worth a month's bread. Its weave so delicate it catches the light like a spider's web. You mix chalk and almond oil for a smooth base, paler than lead but safer, hiding imagined pockmarks for that flawless noble glow, promising skin that screams, "I'm God's chosen." Her cheeks will get cochineal and wine, blended soft for a virgin's blush, high and round to fake youth, a dawn-like glow that hides any late-night secrets. Her eyes, assuming they're brown like most, will get kohl to stretch them large, almond-like, framed by lashes darkened with charcoal for a flutter that's pure and holy. Her brows, hopefully thick, will be painted higher, arched like a noble's, thick with charcoal for status. Her lips, small if God's kind, will get blackberry paste mixed with beeswax, glossy for vows, tart and sticky but meek, shaped into a rosebud to dodge sermons. Her nose will be shadowed with chalk and ochre to slim it. A noble's grace, hiding any peasant breadth. You test the look on Joan's weathered hand, your quill dancing over calloused skin, showing her a mirror of her daughter's future radiance. She gasps, eyes wet with hope or fear, and pays with a warm loaf, its crust crackling like your nerves, still steaming from the oven. "Make her God's own," she begs. You nod, knowing the bride's purity, real or not, is your burden, and one smudge could spark gossip that ruins her, her family, and your name in a single whisper. Let's dive deep into your tools, because they're your lifeline and your torment, a ragtag crew that'd make a sailor weep for their shoddiness. Your mixing bowl, a chipped earthenware relic, looks like it was dug up from a pagan grave, its cracks weeping pigment like blood if you stir too fast, leaving red and white streaks on your table like a battlefield's scars. You've patched it with beeswax, stolen from a chandler's scraps. But it's a losing fight. Every mix risks a spill. Every spill a coin you can't afford, the wax melting in summer's heat or cracking in winter's frost. The bowl's heavy, glazed in a sickly green that's flaking like a leper's skin, and it wobbles on your table, threatening to tip with every gust from the market's chaos or bump from a passing cart. You've named it Betrayer, half in jest, half in truth, because it's failed you at the worst moments, like when a merchant's wife demanded a rush job for a feast and the bowl leaked scarlet paste onto her silk sleeve, earning you a tongue-lashing and no pay, her curses ringing in your ears for days. Your stirring spoon, carved from oak by a drunk whittler who traded it for a dab of blush, is a veteran of countless campaigns, its handle worn smooth by your grip, its bowl crusted with layers of dye, cochineal red, lead white, madder brown, charcoal black that no amount of lye can scour clean. It bends under thick pastes, splinters when you force it through gritty chalk, and groans like it's as weary as you after a 12-hour day. You've thought of replacing it, but a new spoon costs a week's bread, and hunger's a harsher master than a cracked tool. You've learned to wield it like a sword, stirring with short, sharp jabs to avoid snapping it, your wrist aching from the effort, your knuckles whitening as you fight the paste's resistance. It's a stubborn thing, your only ally in the chaos of mixing, and you curse it daily, calling it old mule when it sticks, but cling to it like a lover, because it's seen you through winters when coin was scarcer than sunlight. Your applicators are goose quills, a bundle of fraying feathers plucked from the market's refuse, smelling faintly of poultry even after boiling in a pot you share with pottage. They're finicky, their tips splitting after a few strokes, leaving wisps of fluff in your pastes that you fish out with stained fingers, cursing under your breath. You trim them by candlelight with a dull knife, sharpening their points until your eyes burn from the smoke and strain. But they never stay precise for long, bending under pressure or shedding like a molting swan. Some clients demand squirrel hair brushes, a luxury you've glimpsed in a Venetian trader's kit, soft as a whisper and priced like a knight's horse. But those are for lords and their pampered wives, not fishwives or bakers, So you make do with quills, their shafts warping in the damp, their feathers fraying like your nerves. Yet, in your hands they dance, dabbing lead paste with a feather's tip, smudging koh with a flick, tracing berry juice with a precision born of years dodging complaints and friars' suspicious glares. You've mastered their quirks, knowing which quill's too soft for thick paste, which one's sharp enough for a rosebud lip, but every stroke's a gamble, and a split tip can ruin a face and your day in a heartbeat. Your pigments are a rogue's gallery, each one a pact between beauty and ruin, a gamble with coin and life. White lead, your go-to for that ghostly noble glow, is a slow killer, its metallic tang stinging your nostrils, your fingers trembling after every mix, your stomach twisting like you've swallowed nails. You've seen clients' skin peel after weeks of use, their cheeks flaking like old parchment, their eyes dulling with a sickness no one names, but they beg for more, addicted to the pale status it screams. You mix it with almond oil to smooth it, but the oil's rancid half the time, bought cheap from a tanner's surplus, smelling like nuts gone bad and leaving a greasy sheen. Cochineal beetles crushed into a scarlet paste for blush are a fortune, each bug a tiny ruby traded from merchants who charge like they're selling gold dust. Their earthy reek, like damp soil after a storm, clings to your mortar, stained red as a butcher's block, and your hands cramp from grinding them, the pestle heavy as your worries. You ration them, measuring each pinch like a miser, knowing a single spill could cost you a week's meals. Charcoal coal mixed with pork fat is your cheapest trick, but it's greasy, smelling of burnt bacon, leaving your stall reeking and your fingers slick as a thief's. It smudges too easily, a nightmare for sweaty feast-goers or brides weeping through vows, but it's all you've got for those smoky, sinful eyes that stretch small gazes into holy almonds. Saffron's your treasure, a pinch of golden threads rarer than mercy, hidden in a linen scrap tucked inside your bodice, close to your heart where no thief's hand can wander. It costs more than a month's wages, bartered from a spice trader who eyed you like you were mad for wanting it, his smirk saying only nobles play with such fire. Its golden glow, dusted on eyelids, catches torchlight like a cathedral's mosaic, making eyes shimmer like a noble's dream. But you stretch it with mica, a gritty, dull cousin that flakes by dessert, scratching skin and dimming the shine. Clients don't know, or don't care, as long as they gleam for an hour, but you wince at the lie, knowing true saffron's magic is a fleeting gift. You've tried cheaper dyes to save coin, each a lesson in folly. Woad, meant for blue, turned a weaver's cheeks picked blue, like a warrior from a monk's tale, and she cursed you for a month, her husband threatening to dunk you in the river. Madder root, a budget red, left orange undertones that made a bride look like a carrot, her mother refusing to pay, her glare sharper than a fishwife's knife. Onion skins, boiled for a ruddy brown, smelled like a tavern's floor, faded by noon, and left clients sneezing, their eyes watering like they'd been hexed. You stick to your poisons now, praying the damage, blistered skin, trembling hands, sour stomachs, comes later, not today, when coin's the only thing keeping you fed. Mixing's an art, a tightrope walk over a pit of failure, each blend a battle against physics and fate. Too much oil, and the paste slides off like grease on a skillet, ruining a client's face and your name. Too little, and it's a gritty crust that cracks on the skin, flaking like snow in a sermon. You've learned the ratios by feel, your hands knowing what your eyes can't see in the market's dim light. 2 parts chalk to 1 part oil, a drop of wine for cochineal's vibrancy, a whisper of rosewater to mask lead's metallic bite, sharp as a blade's edge. Your hands are a map of your trade, stained red, black, yellow, white, the colours bleeding into cracked cuticles, your nails chipped, your skin raw from lye washes that burn like sin. The brazier, a clay pot of glowing coals, is your only heat, but it spits ash into your mixtures, smoke into your eyes. Its warmth thawing frozen pastes in winter, but turning summer into a furnace where sweat beads on your brow, dripping into your bowl like tears. You've burned your fingers more times than you can count, each scar a badge of haste or hope, your skin toughening like a tanner's hide under the brazier's cruel kiss. You've mastered the quick blend, the quill's flick, the sleight of hand that hides lead's whiff from nosy friars who sniff your stall like hounds hunting heresy. You tilt your bowl to catch the market's faint light, showing clients a mirror of their dreams, not the gritty truth of your pastes. Your stool's a stage, your tools props in a play where you're artist, alchemist, and scapegoat. Every mix a prayer to St. Lucy for steady hands, to your own grit for survival in a world that loves your art but loathes its maker. The afternoon unfurls like a tapestry of toil, a parade of faces each bearing its own puzzle, its own plea for transformation in the market's relentless grind. Edith, a guildmaster's mother, shuffles to your stall, her hands trembling with a rosary, wanting a matron's grace for a Saint's Day Mass. A look to hide age's toll and reclaim a shred of dignity in a town that forgets the old, her skin's thin, wrinkled like old leather, soaking pigment like a sponge, her eyes faded blue, brows sparse, lips cracked, nose small but veined from years of ale and cold. You use a whisper of chalk, barely there, to smooth her sallow cheeks, hiding wrinkles and pockmarks for a noble's glow, soft as a prayer. For blush, you blend madder root with rosewater, a warm, faint flush to fake health, high on her cheeks to lift her weary. Her eyes get kohl, smudged gently with a quill's tip to brighten their blue, stretching them toward almond grace, making them large and soulful, a window to her enduring spirit. Her brows, sparse as a winter hedge, get charcoal to arch high, framing her face like a noble's, thick and bold to defy her years. Her lips, cracked and thin, get a soft madder touch, shaped into a rosebud curve, meek and holy, hiding her yellowed teeth. You shadow her nose, with chalk to hide its veins, keeping it delicate, a saint's grace. She whispers of her late husband, a weaver who died in a tavern brawl, her voice a thread of grief woven with pride for their son, now a guildman. You listen, your quill gentle as a caress, because beauty for her isn't vanity, it's armour, a claim to still matter in a world that shuns widows. She pays with a copper ring, too small for your finger but good for bartering a loaf or a candle, and shuffles off, her face a quiet triumph, her step lighter despite the weight of her years. Next comes Margery, a chandler's wife, with a task that chills your bones like a winter wind. Her dead sister's face needs painting for burial, a final act of love to ease the living's grief before the grave claims her. You follow Margery to the church, your tools in a worn sack, heart heavy as the bell tolls, its clang echoing in your chest like a judgment. The body lies on a trestle in the nave, cold and stiff, her face grey and sunken, eyes closed, brows faint, lips blue, nose sharp in death's cruel grip, her skin a map of a fever that stole her in the night. You mix chalk and almond oil for a pale base, spreading it gently with a quill to hide death's pallor, your hand trembling in the church's chill, the air thick with incense, sobs, and the rustle of mourners' cloaks. For her cheeks, you dab a faint cochineal blush, barely there, high and soft to fake a spark of life, a whisper of youth she'll never reclaim. Her lips get madder root dye, soft and natural, shaped into a rosebud smile, because Margery wants her sister asleep, not gone, her voice breaking like a twig underfoot. Her brows, faint as a ghost's shadow, get a light charcoal touch, arched gently for peace, thick enough to frame her face with dignity. Her nose is shadowed with chalk and ochre to keep it delicate, hiding death's sharpening. No kohl, closed eyes need no frame, but you darken her lashes with charcoal for a restful grace, a final nod to beauty. The priest watches from the altar, his eyes sharp as a falcon's, sniffing for signs of sin or sorcery in your work. You keep your movements slow, reverent, your quills whispering across her skin like a prayer, your breath shallow to avoid his gaze. You finish, step back, and Margery sobs, touching her sister's face, now serene, almost living, a memory painted for the mourners. She pays with a candle, its wax still warm, its light flickering like the hope you've given her. You leave, the cold of death clinging to your skin like damp wool, a shadow that'll haunt your dreams, the weight of her face heavier than your sack. Now, let's unravel the styles, because they're the heart of your craft, a sprawling circus of ambition, absurdity, and aching hope, each one a story painted in pigment, sweat, and prayer. For feasts, women crave the Byzantine blaze, a look stolen from whispered tales of Constantinople's courts, where beauty's a weapon sharper than a knight's sword. It's a pale face white as a shroud with lead paste, hiding every flaw, pockmarks, freckles, scars, for that noble glow that screams wealth. Scarlet cheeks, high and bold, burn like sin itself, blended from cochineal and wine to catch the torchlight in a Guildhall's smoky haze, round and youthful to defy the years. Eyelids shimmer with gold dust, saffron and mica, gritty but glorious, making eyes small or large gleam like holy relics in a cathedral's glow. Brows arch high, thick with charcoal, framing the face like a noble's crest, soaring like cathedral vaults. Lips, rosebud, small to dodge sermons, get cochineal, red as fresh blood, curved meekly to mask their power. The nose is shadowed with chalk and ochre to slim it, straight and noble, a saint's grace. It's a daring look, a priest's nightmare, but women like the vintner's daughter beg for it, their eyes gleaming with ambition to outshine rivals at the feast, their husbands or their own doubts. You blend fast, your quill trembling under their impatient stares, knowing one smudge could ruin their night, and your name, in a single whisper. Weddings demand the maiden's dawn, a dewy glow that screams virginity, even if the bride's been sneaking off with the groom's brother in the hayloft. Its chalk-pale skin, smoother than lead's poison, hiding pockmarks and freckles for a flawless noble glow, translucent as a saint's veil, cheeks blush pink, soft as the dawn sky, blended from cochineal and wine, high and round to fake youth, a lie that fools the groom's kin. Eyes, brown or blue, get kohl to stretch them large, almond-like, framed by lashes darkened with charcoal for a flutter that's pure and holy, a nod to the Virgin's grace. Brows soar, thick and arched, painted with charcoal for nobility, high as a cathedral's spire. Lips, small and meek, get blackberry paste mixed with beeswax, glossy for vows, tart and sticky but pure, shaped into a rosebud to dodge the priest's frown. The nose is shadow delicate, a noble's grace, hiding any peasant breadth. You show mothers how to apply it, your quill dancing over calloused hands, promising daughters will look like angels descended from heaven. Half the time it's a lie, the bride's eyes betray secrets, her blush hiding late-night trysts, but your pigments don't judge. You've painted maids who wept through their vows, mothers who schemed for better matches, brides who glowed with love or trembled with fear, each stroke a prayer for their future, a shield against the world's harsh eyes. Old women seek the matron's grace, a subtle look to defy age's theft, and claim respect in a town that forgets the elderly. Their skins thin, creased like old leather, soaking pigment like parchment, so you use light chalk to smooth sallow cheeks, hiding wrinkles and pockmarks for a noble's glow, soft as a whispered prayer. For blush, you blend madder with rosewater, a warm, faint flush to fake health, high to lift weary faces. Eyes, faded blue or brown, get kohl smudged gently to brighten, stretching them toward almond grace, large and soulful. Brows, sparse as a winter hedge, get charcoal to arch high, thick for status. Lips, cracked and thin, get soft madder, shaped into a rosebud, meek and holy. Noses are shadowed to hide veins, keeping them delicate. These women, widows, grandmothers, spinsters carry stories in their wrinkles. Lost sons to war, cruel winters without wood, husbands buried too soon. You listen, your quill gentle, because beauty for them is armour, a claim to matter in a world that shuns them. Their payments, rings, ribbons, prayers are small, but their trust is a weight you carry home, heavier than your sack. Men's styles are simpler but no less fraught, a delicate dance to dodge the church's wrath. Young clerks and squires want the knight's vigour, a ruddy flush to fake health and strength, even if they're scrawny lads who faint at a cut. You mix ochre and rosewater, brushing it onto cheeks and lips for a glow that says, I'm hale enough to joust. Keeping it subtle, priests call painted men-goats in velvet a sin worse than theft. Eyes get charcoal smudged at the corners for boldness, stretching small gazes toward almond glory. Brows, sparse, are darkened for status, arched high like a noble's. Lips, thin or cracked, get soft berry juice, red but meek, shaped to hide yellow teeth. Noses are shadowed to slim them, hiding brawlers' crooks. Older men, guildmasters or merchants, Ask for a lord's presence, a touch of red to mask gout's pallor or ale's flush, applied so subtly their wives don't notice, their pride intact. You've painted boys dreaming of glory, men clinging to power, each face a canvas of ambition or fear, their coin as vital as their trust. Then there's the Saracen Veil, a feast day favourite for daring women, inspired by crusaders' tales of Eastern mystics spun in taverns over ale. Its smoky kohl rimming the eyes, thick and smudgy, with a pale face to make the darkness pop, stretching gazes to almond-like mystery. Brows arch high, thick with charcoal, lips red but meek with cochineal, noses shadowed delicate. It's a rebellion. A priest's nightmare, sermons call it the devil's mask. And you've seen women shamed for less, but the ladies love it, their eyes gleaming with secrets as they glide to revels. It fades fast, sweat and wine blurring it by midnight, but for a moment it's magic, a glimpse of a world beyond the town's mud and misery. The dead get the eternal rest, a style that haunts your sleep like a spectre. You mix chalk and oil for a pale base, hiding death's grey grip, spreading it gently to fake life's glow. Cheeks get a faint cochineal blush, high and soft, a whisper of youth. Lips, blue or grey, get madder, soft and natural, shaped into a rosebud's smile for peace. Brows, faint, are arched gently with charcoal, thick for dignity. Noses are shadowed to keep them delicate, hiding death's sharpening. No kohl, closed eyes need no frame, but lashes darken with charcoal for restful grace. The work's quiet, your quill trembling in the church's chill, the air heavy with incense, sobs, and the priest's stare, sharp as a blade. These jobs pay in candles, prayers, or tears, but they linger, a cold weight in your chest that no fire can warm, each face a wound you can't heal. The church is your nemesis, a shadow darker than your coal, its grip tighter than your hemp belt. Makeup's a sin, they preach, a falsehood hiding God's creation, a lure for lust, a lie that damns souls. Women with painted faces are harlots, their cheeks a map of vice. Men who dab on colour are effeminate, their souls soft as their skin. And you? You're the devil's brush, painting the town's path to You've seen women shamed in the market square, their cheeks scrubbed raw with lie, the crowd jeering as priests rail against vanity's fires. One, a weaver's wife, wore your cochineal blush to a feast. The next day she was flogged, her cheeks bleeding as she sobbed, her eyes locking with yours in the crowd, a silent plea you couldn't answer. You stood, frozen, heart pounding, knowing your quills helped weave her shame. Men aren't spared. Last month a clerk with your ochre flush was mocked in a sermon called a peacock in God's flock, his master shunning him, his coin lost to you. You keep your colours soft, your hands discreet, blending in the stall's shadows to avoid notice, but it's never enough. Last week, a friar lingered at your table, his nose twitching like he smelled brimstone in your leave paste, his fingers tracing your bowl as if it held demons. "This is vanity's fire," he muttered, his voice low as a grave's whisper, his eyes boring into yours like a judge's. You stammered about St. Lucy, patron of sight and purity's grace, your voice shaking like a leaf in a gale, your hands hiding your stained fingers under your cloth. He left, his cloak sweeping the mud, but your pulse hasn't slowed, a drumbeat of fear that follows you home, waking you at night with visions of the pillory, your face a target for rotten fish and worse. Or the river, tied to a ducking stool, your breath stolen by icy water as the crowd chants witch. You're no sorceress, but in 1290 a woman with pigments is close enough, her tools a confession in the wrong light. You burn sage at night, not for spells but to calm your nerves, praying the smoke doesn't draw more eyes. You invoke saints, Lucy, Claire, Agnes, to justify your work, claiming it's for God's glory, not man's lust. Brides painted for marriage's sanctity, matrons for age's respect, the dead for heaven's gate. It's a lie you tell yourself, a thin armour against sermons and stares, but the church's cage is iron, its shadow never lifting. Gossip's your currency, your trap, your only power in this fish-stinking town. A double-edged blade sharper than any knight's. Your stool's a confessional, spilling secrets faster than your pastes drip onto your cloth. Agnes, the fishwife, whispers that her husband's bedding a sailor, her voice low as you dab her cheeks, her eyes darting to her rival stall. Thomas, the clerk, hints the merchant's skimming guild funds, his words a ladder for his ambition, as you smudge his colt. Joan, the baker's wife, swears the bride's not as pure as her veil, her hands twisting as you test her daughter's blush, her envy bitter as nettle tea. Edith, the old matron, mumbles about a priest's midnight visits to a widow, her rosary clicking like a warning as you paint her brows. Marjorie, grieving her sister, sobs that the dead woman saw a ghost before the fever took her, her tears smudging your chalk as you steady your quill. You listen, nod, your face a mask of calm, your heart racing as each secret piles like stones on your shoulders. These secrets are gold, but they're poison, a blade ready to cut if you slip. You've heard it all. Affairs that could spark duels, thefts that could send men to the gallows, curses whispered under moonlight that could brand a woman witch. You store them like a miser's hoard, locked behind your teeth, never spending a word, because one loose syllable, and you're the villain, accused of slander or worse. Last year, a tanner's wife repeated a rumour you'd heard at your stall, that the miller's daughter hexed a cow to dry its milk. The miller's kin came for her, and she was ducked in the river, her screams echoing as you hid in your hut, guilt gnawing like a rat. You hadn't spread the tale, but your stall's where it was born, your silence no shield against the weight. You've learned to read voices, to know when a whisper's bravado or fear. Agnes's gossip hides her shame, Thomas's hints climb over others' ruin, Joan's tales sting with envy, Edith's murmurs cling to lost years, Marjorie's sobs mourn a sister gone. You nod, blend, seal your lips, but each secret adds a stone. Your stall a crossroads where the town's sins and dreams collide, and you're the keeper, trusted and feared, needed and shunned. Skincare's a sideline, a small coin in your trade's purse, selling herb waters to clean faces battered by smoke and toil. You steep lavender, sage or thyme in vinegar, bottling it in clay vials that leak if tilted, the liquid stinging like a wasp but scouring grease and fish oil from weathered cheeks. Rich women use almond oil, costly as a week's bread, to fake that dewy glow, their skins soft as a noble's glove. Peasants use lard, cheap and rancid, leaving them smelling like a butcher's stall and slick as a gutted eel. You sell nettle brews for acne, blamed on demons or bad blood, their bitter scent lingering on your hands. You've seen urine poultices in desperate huts, smeared to fade pimples, a practice you dodge but don't judge. Survival trumps pride. Egg-white masks tighten wrinkles, cracking like your hopes, while goose fat, rubbed at night, leaves beds reeking and faces shiny. Bone needles lance boils, a job you avoid. Your quills paint, not pop, but you sell comfrey salves to mask infection's stench. Every client dreams of noble skin, but the town's fleas, smoke and pottage make it a lie. You paint over with lead, chalk, and whispered prayers. The day grinds on, the market's chaos a relentless tide. Vendors shouting, dogs barking, carts creaking, gulls diving for fish scraps, the air thick with smoke, dung and despair. A tanner's wife, Cecily, wants a feast day look to catch a knight's eye, her face sallow from years in the tannery's stink, her eyes small, brows thin, lips full and bold, nose broad. You slather lead paste for pale nobility, cochineal for scarlet cheeks, coal for smoky eyes, charcoal for highbrows, madder for rosebud lips, shadowing her nose to slim it. She pays with a leather scrap, useful for patching, and struts off, her bold lips a risk you pray doesn't spark a sermon. A cooper's son, Godwin, needs a tournament glow, ruddy cheeks to look like a warrior, not a barrel maker, his skin greasy, brows sparse, nose crooked. You use ochre for health, charcoal for bold eyes, berry juice for lips, shadowing his nose, darkening his brows. He pays with a bent nail, grinning like he's already won, though he'll sweat it off by noon. A nun's cousin, Alice, begs for a pilgrimage look, pale, no blush, just chalk for holiness, her eyes brown, brows thick, lips small. You keep it subtle, dodging sin, and she pays with a prayer, worth nothing but guilt. A merchant's widow, Emma, wants her late husband's face painted for his wake, a task that chills your bones. You use chalk for pallor, cochineal for life, madder for lips, charcoal for brows, shadowing his nose. Your quill trembling in the church's gloom. She pays with a silver thread, a treasure for barter. but the cold of death lingers. Night falls, the market quiets, its chaos fading to a murmur of wind and distant dogs. You stagger home, heavy as a sack of cod, your body aching, hands raw, eyes burning, back screaming, feet numb from standing. The streets are a river of muck, fish scales glistening under stars like mocking jewels. You collapse onto your pallet, straw poking like a creditor's finger, the damp seeping through your dress. Maud sleeps, her breath soft against the fire's hiss. Pike curls beside you, purring smugly. You pull the blanket tight, its wool clawing your skin, and stare at the embers, glowing like stubborn hope. Your hands throb, stained and trembling. Your eyes sting from smoke and strain. But you're alive. Another day painted, another day waiting. You're a makeup artist, unseen but vital. A weaver of dreams in a world that loves your art but loathes its maker. Your quills turn fishwives into queens, clerks into courtiers, the dead into memories, each stroke a defiance of mud, misery, and sermons. The town's faces glow, its secrets safe, because of you, a rebel with a feather, painting hope onto a canvas of despair. Your dreams are small, a new bowl that doesn't leak, a pinch of saffron to call your own. A day without a frost, but they're yours, flickering like embers, stubborn as your heart. The makeup artists of 1290 were beauty's alchemists, turning mud and poison into miracles. Their quills defied church, plague, and despair, painting hope onto weary faces. From Byzantine blaze to eternal rest, each stroke was a story, status, rebellion, farewell. As stars burn over the town, its faces radiant, its sins hidden, they sleep, safe in the hands of those who dared to paint. As the sun dips below the thatched roofs of your medieval town in 1290, you, the makeup artist, stow your quills and pigments, your fingers stained with cochineal red and lead white, your shoulders aching from a day of painting dreams onto weathered faces. The market's clamour, fishmongers' shouts, cartwheels creaking, gulls squawking, fades to a murmur, leaving a quieter hum. The town's secrets whispered in alleys, behind tattered curtains, or in the damp straw of shared beds. Your work's done for the day, but the faces you've touched linger in your mind. Agnes, the fishwife, wanted her cheeks flushed to outshine a rival at the guild feast. Thomas, the clerk, craved a courtly glow to catch a weaver's eye. Joan's daughter, a bride-to-be, glowed with chalk-pale purity, her veil a mask for nerves or secrets. Each stroke of your quill framed more than beauty, it hid desires, signalled status or shielded shame. In this town, a painted face is a banner of hope, a lure for love or a defence against the gossip that cuts sharper than a fishwife's knife. You trudge home through the muddy lanes, Pike, your tabby, weaving between your ankles, his purr a small comfort against the chill. The town's timber houses lean like weary drunks, their thatch glowing faintly under a sliver of moon. Behind those walls, life pulses, families bicker, babies wail, lovers steal moments in the dark. Your pigments, drying on faces across the town, frame the eyes that seek stolen glances, the lips that whisper vows or sins, the cheeks that flush with urges no priest can tame. Love, or its rawer kin, lust, drives this place as fiercely as hunger or faith. But in 1290, intimacy isn't the soft ballad of a troubadour's lute. It's a gritty, high-stakes wrestle in a world of mud, straw, and suspicion. As you settle by your hearth, embers casting shadows on your wattle and daub walls, the town's heart beats louder, its desires spilling like ale from a cracked mug. Let's slip past the curtains, dodge the church's glare, and uncover what sex was really like in this fish-stinking, fervent corner of England where every touch is a risk, and every sigh a rebellion. Your home, like most in town, is a single room, its dirt floor slick with spilled pottage, its hearth spitting ash that clings to your hemp dress. The air's thick with the reek of fish from the market, dung from the lane, and smoke from your brazier. Your bed's a sagging pallet of straw and rushes, damp from a leaky thatch shared with your cousin Maud and Pike, whose fleas are as bold as a peddler's lies. The blanket's wool, stiff as a tanner's hide, scratches like a penance, offering little warmth against the draught. Here, intimacy is no private dance. It's a public act, staged with Maud snoring, Pike yowling, and the neighbour's cart creaking outside. If you ever felt a spark for someone, you'd need to be quick, quiet and lucky, waiting for Maud to visit her mother or Pike to chase rats. The straw, your only witness. Most folk live like this. Agnes, whose cheeks you painted red as apples, shares her hut with her husband, 3 snotty kids, her widowed mother, and a pig who roots through the rushes like a lord claiming tithes. Their bed's a straw mattress, lumpy as a bad lie, stuffed with chaff that pokes through threadbare linen. Curtains are for merchants, a tattered cloth on a rope's all they have, swaying with every gust, offering as much privacy as a market stall. Agnes whispered to you, her eyes bright with your cochineal, that she and her man stole a moment last week, but the neighbour's lad overheard, and now the alewife smirks like she's cracked a riddle. Walls are thinner than a nun's veil, and gossip spreads faster than plague rats. A moan's as good as a confession, sparking snickers or sermons, and Agnes knows to hush her laughter, lest it cost her more than a blush. Even the better-off struggle for solitude. Merchants and guildmasters, like Joan's husband the baker, boast carved oak beds with feather mattresses, soft as a cloud, but their solars, private chambers, are no sanctuaries. Apprentices sprawl on rushes at the bed's foot. Hounds fart like bellows, and servants shuffle through, fetching ale or candles. Noble households, like the merchant's wife you painted for a banquet, keep ledgers of who beds where, legal proof for inheritance or annulments, making every tryst a documented risk. Maids fluff pillows, stewards tally expenses, and chaplains mutter prayers in corners, their eyes averted but ears sharp. Privacy's a coin few can spend, and even then it's clipped by prying hands. Travellers fare worse. The inn by the town's gate crams strangers into shared beds, 2, 3, even 4 to a straw pallet, their boots reeking of mud, their snores a chorus of pigs. A drover, his cheeks ochre-glowed for a guild feast, grumbled to you about sharing a mattress with a monk and a tinker, their elbows jabbing his ribs, killing any hope of a tryst with the barmaid he'd eyed. If you're married, you might steal a quick tumble, praying your spouse isn't too drunk or weary from gutting cod. Unmarried, you're dodging neighbours, priests and fathers with pitchforks, the town's eyes sharper than your quills. Monasteries and convents are no refuge. Vows of chastity are iron, abbots patrol like hawks, yet whispers reach your stall, of nuns exchanging unholy letters, their garden trysts veiled by high walls. In this town, desire is a high-wire act, one slip earning shame, fines, or a dunk in the river for lewdness. Yet it burns, a spark in the straw, defiant against the cold, the church, and the pig's glare. The church doesn't just loom over the town, it's the air you breathe, its rules carved into every bedpost. Sex, to the bishops, has one purpose: making more Christians. Pleasure, bonding, or a moment's escape are distractions, sins in disguise. Agnes muttered to you, her lips madder red, about a confessor who asked if she enjoyed her husband's touch. As if a smile during love damned her soul, theologians in cold scriptoria pen tomes on what's allowed, their quills scratching out joy like a stain. The rules are a labyrinth of no's. Sundays are sacred, Fridays for penance, Wednesdays nod to Judas's betrayal, Lent's 40 days, Advent's 40, saints' feasts, fasts, holy days, and even certain moon phases bar the bed. A clerk at the tavern, his brows your charcoal, read from a manual listing half the year as forbidden, a calendar of divine denial. Agnes grumbled that her priest warned against excess during Lent, threatening sickly babes, or God's wrath for a Tuesday tryst. The church's ideal is grim, missionary for procreation, not passion, the least likely to offend God or the saints. Enthusiasm, creativity, or joy are suspect. Thomas, his eyes coal-rimmed, blushed when his confessor grilled him about a feast-night tumble, demanding penance for overzealous love. Confession's a trap, priests probing with questions sharper than your quills. How often? What way? Did you seek pleasure? The friar knows more about your bed than your birthday, his ledger of sins thicker than a guild's accounts. Enforcement varies. Some priests wink at frailty, others hunt sin like hounds. Peasants like Agnes nod at sermons, then slip into the straw, their hearts louder than doctrine. Nobles like the merchant's wife face stricter eyes. Chaplains, confessors, scribes track their beds, every creak a risk to honour or heirs. Yet the church's grip falters in the muck. Peasants, too busy surviving frost or famine, shrug off Tuesday's sanctity for a stolen moment. A baker's apprentice, his flush yoroka, boasted of a hayloft tryst, grinning despite the priest's warnings. The calendar's an obstacle course, but desire leaps it, fueled by ale, moonlight, and stubborn hearts. Cross the wrong day, and you're confessing for weeks. Your soul weighed against a bishop's frown, your neighbour's whispers sharper than any penance. Still, the straw holds secrets, and the town's pulse beats on, defiant as pikes purr. Love in 1290 isn't hearts and flowers, it's a contract, sealed with land, goats, or a grudging handshake. Marriage is a deal, not a dream, merging fields, forging alliances, or settling a feud over a stolen cabbage. Maud, unwed at 24, frets by your hearth, her hands twisting as her father haggles with a tanner, her dowry a linen sheet and a scrawny pig. Love's a luxury, like saffron in your pigments. Daughters are traded, nobles for castles, peasants for a plough. Agnes's marriage, she told you while you painted her cheeks, was sealed over ale, her father swapping her for a fishing net and a shared catch. A bride's worth is her dowry, coin, cloth, or a muddy patch called a field. Grooms offer tools, land, or a vow not to feud. Courtship's a supervised slog. Lovers don't stroll hand in hand, they dodge mothers, aunts, or the village's nosy eyes. Joan's daughter, her bridal glow your chalk, stole glances at her betrothed by the well, her mother's shadow looming. Nobles face arranged matches, love an afterthought. A proverb you heard at the market sums it, better a rich match with a scowl than a poor one with smiles. Men are judged by their ox, tools, or guild rank, women by cooking, weaving, or avoiding market drama. Maud's suitor, a tanner with a limp, was picked for coin, not charm, her size ignored. Love blooms after vows, not before. Agnes grew fond of her husband over years of shared nets, his rough hands gentle in the dark. Secret flirtations, moonlit wells, barn-shedding kisses are risky side quests. Thomas, his collier whispered of a weaver's daughter, their hands brushing in a hayloft, but her brother's fist ended it, his bruise a warning. Love's a bonus, kindled in chores and survival, stubborn as weeds through cobbles. The chastity belt, that iron cage of tavern tales, is a myth spun by later ages. No knight locks his lady's virtue while crusading, no tailor stitches them, no smith forges them, no priest blesses them. The idea's absurd, a rusty trap, worn through mud and market, breeding sores faster than fleas. Manuscripts, Thomas scribes, are silent on belts, despite detailing every sin from gluttony to gossip. Renaissance jesters and Victorian prudes loved the image of a chained wife, but in 1290, fidelity leans on sharper tools, shame, spies, sermons. Noble women, like the merchant's wife you painted, are chaperoned tighter than a guild's coin, maids and priests trailing their steps. Peasant girls like Maud face the village's eyes, every glance at the miller's son noted by the alewife. A kiss by the river could torch a dowry or spark a feud. A weaver's daughter, her cheeks your cochineal, was shamed for a barn tryst. Her family fined a goat. Her name mud for months. Chastity's no belt, it's a cage of whispers, locking hearts with fear, not keys. The town's brothel, behind the tanner's yard, isn't a secret, it's a taxed business. Its red lantern glow a nod to order. The council licenses it, coins clinking, a keeper of public women overseeing it like a grim clerk. You've painted faces there, Cecily, her eyes coal dark, her smile brittle as your chipped bowl. The logic's cold. Men need an outlet, or they'll chase adultery or dancing. The church damns harlots, but priests often turn blind eyes, some collecting rent from the beds they curse. The brothel's a timber shack, its straw floor sticky with ale, its walls hung with frayed cloth. Clean sheets are a dream, health checks a prayer. Knights pay coin, apprentices offer eggs, monks slip in despite vows. Cecily, her lips mad and red, chose this life after her husband drowned. Her widow's weeds swapped for a thin shift. Others, port girls trafficked by sailors, have hollow eyes. Work's no fairy tale. Some earn a loom, most scrape by, the keeper taking half. You've seen Cecily's bruises, her coal smudged by tears, but she shrugs. Better this than starvation. The brothel's a mirror, grubby, human, defiant. It's women painting their faces when you're not there, their pigments a shield against scorn. Hygiene's a lost battle. Bathing's a luxury, not a habit. The town's stench, fish, dung, smoke, clinging like a second skin. You splash your face with ditch water. It's green film, a gamble. Agnes bathes monthly, scrubbing with lye and ash soap that burns like penance, used sparingly as it costs bread. Public bathhouses, like the one by the church, are rare, closed by fever or scandal. A priest last spring blamed lewd steam for God's wrath. Merchants soak in herb-scented tubs, their servants rubbing them with linen. You? A cold sponge and a prayer your fish-tinged aroma fades. Water's suspect. Cold dips weaken the body. Some say opening pores to demons. Perfumes for nobles, deodorants a dream. Teeth are rubbed with ash or mint, but most grins, like Maud's, are yellow, kisses gritty. Clothing traps every scent. Wool tunics, leather shoes, linen shifts layered with sweat and pottage. Your dress, pigment-stained, reeks of market and misery. Yet love persists, nose blind. Agnes laughs about her husband's fishy musk. Their straw bed a haven despite the stink. Family planning's a shaky cart. Babies mean hunger, so couples try herbs and hope. You've sold nettle brews to Joan, her eyes desperate, the tea meant to calm the womb. Rue, pennyroyal, juniper boiled in ale, promise to prevent pregnancies. But they're risky. Joan's sister bled for days from too much rue, her face grey as your chalk. Linen soaked in acacia or wax barriers leak like your bowl. A tavern song jests about jumping thrice after, a laugh hiding despair. The church damns contraception. Procreation's the goal, but poverty drives defiance. Agnes, her kids hungry, sips sage tea in secret. Unmarried lovers, like Thomas and his weaver, face fines or shotgun weddings. A miller's daughter, her blush your chalk, hid her belly, her hasty vows rushed before the priest's frown. Contraception's a gamble, folk wisdom its dice, its failures sparking whispers louder than any charm. Not every couple waits for vows. Testing the goods fills church ledgers with fornication fines, a sin as old as the cobbles. You've painted hasty brides like Joan's daughter, her veil hiding a round belly. Lovers steal moments, haylofts, riverbanks, barn shadows, their hearts racing against the village's eyes. Thomas, his collier art, bragged of a weaver's tryst, their giggles muffled by straw, but her brother's fist and a fine sobered him. Courts track lewdness, their moral rolls a ledger of shame. A baker's lad, his cheeks ochre, paid a farthing for a mill tryst, his grin defiant despite the stocks. Fines vary, pregnancies cost a goat, marriage erases some debts. Handfasting, a half-vow by the well, lets couples cohabit, a loophole the church hates. A cooper's daughter, her lips your madder, handfasted her lover, their babe early but forgiven. Noble's face harsher stakes, a merchant's son. His flush Euroka was exiled for a maid's love. Gossip's the real whip, neighbours snitch faster than rats, their tongues sharp as fines. Virginity's no mere virtue, it's currency, a marriage clause, a village obsession. Peasant girls like Maud must arrive untested, their dowry tied to purity. A slip, a riverbank kiss means fines or a rushed wedding. Joan's daughter faced whispers of a hayloft tryst, her mother's glare sharp as your quill. Nobles guard it fiercer, virginity seals alliances. A merchant's wife, betrothed at 12, was watched by maids till her vows. Proofs brutal, bloodied sheets waved like a banner, a grim custom sparking lawsuits or feuds if absent. Midwives prod, matrons gossip, claiming she seemed chaste. Men face no scrutiny, a groom's tavern nights raise no brows. Virginity's a maiden's chain, a broken vow dragging dowries and honour into the mud, your pigments masking the shame. Same-sex love exists, human as the cobbles, but it's a shadow dance, coded and quiet. The church calls it sin, its sermons thundering of unnatural acts. Punishments swing, peasants get penance, nobles exile, monks a flogging. Yet life's messier. 2 nights, their ochre flushes your work, shared a tent on campaign, their vows brotherly but tender. A nunnery novice, her face your chalk, wrote poems to a sister, their garden walks too close for prayer. Monks pen Latin love letters, veiled as faith, while nuns share beds, their devotion deep. No labels exist, just careful living. Songs and saints' tales hide love in allegory. A weaver's lad, his brows your charcoal, was fined for a stable boy's kiss, but the town's shrug softened the blow. These bonds burn bright, a quiet rebellion against a world demanding heirs. Adultery's a social quake, shaking dowries and honour. For women, stakes are dire. Agnes whispered of a sailor's wife caught with a drover, her dowry lost, her shift paraded through the square. Noble women risk exile or worse. A merchant's wife, her banquet face your saffron could be removed if her lord's pride stings. Men skate lighter, a guildman's fling raises brows, not blades. A tanner, his flush your ochre, paid a fine for a tavern tryst, his wife's glare his real punishment. Punishments vary, fines, shaming, or a church bell's toll. Honour killings, rare but real, haunt nobles. A baker's wife, her lips your murder, lost a cow for a miller's love, her name mud till death. Adultery's a live coal, burning hearts and beds in its wake. Consent exists, tangled in law and force. Canon law demands verbal "I will" for marriage, but reality's grimmer. Noble daughters nod to fathers' deals, their dowries louder than their hearts. Maud's betrothal to the tanner was her father's choice, her tears ignored. Peasant women choose freer, but face pressure, say no to the reeve's son, and your fields lose water. Husbands claim marital debt, refusal grounds for annulment. Agnes winced when her man demanded her no drowned by law. Courts hear coercion cases, a weaver's daughter, her blush your chalk, won a fine against a drover's force. Troubadour songs dance with consent, knights pining, ladies refusing, but life ignores the poetry. Consent's a fraying thread, looser for men, tighter for women. The church distrusts pleasure, a thief stealing souls from heaven. Marital love's allowed, but barely, once a month, in the dark, no grins. Theologians call desire a flaw, celibacy the gold standard. Monks and nuns shine brightest, their beds cold. Couples who abstain, like the merchant's parents you painted for a wake, are half saints. Priests probe. Was it lustful? Thomas blushed when asked, his penance a week's prayer. Peasants nod, then ignore, their straw beds warmer than sermons. Nobles, watched by chaplains, redirect passion to prayer. Yet love defies Agnes's husband, his musk-fishy, holds her close, their laughter a rebellion against doctrine. Despite the mud, priests and pitchforks, love blooms awkward and fierce. Peasants caught in fields trading turnips and whispers. Maud's shy glances at the tanner's lad before her betrothal. Nobles pen poetry, their banquet glances your saffron's frame. Monks write coded letters, their faith a veil for longing. A cooper's wife, her blush your cochineal, eloped with a drover, her father's curse drowned by love. Widows remarry for heart. Like Edith, her matrons grace your chalk, choosing a weaver for his laugh. Love's a weed, stubborn through cobbles, defying Lent and priests. This town's desires echo distant wisdom. Stoicism, born on Zeno's painted porch in Athens, whispers through monasteries where Thomas's brother reads Seneca. Zeno, shipwrecked and broke, taught virtue, courage, wisdom is the only good, not love's flush. Seneca, Nero's flawed advisor, urged restraint amid chaos. Epictetus, a slave, said, "Freedom's in the mind, your bed's shared, but your soul's unchained." Marcus Aurelius, emperor, wrote Meditations on War's Edge, facing betrayal with calm, expecting gratitude, a mantra for your stall, where clients haggle or priests scowl. Agnes shrugs off gossip with fishwife's grit. Thomas faces his weaver's rejection with a nod. Maud's stoic silence shields her tears. Stoicism's an anchor, teaching you to run with life's cart, not be dragged. Roman baths, centuries gone, were empires of steam and gossip, where senators soaked, their desires whispered in the coldarium's haze. Unlike your ditchwater sponge baths, Romans bathed daily, hypercosts heating floors, aqueducts feeding pools. Baths were health, humours balanced, but also seduction. The frigidarium's chill, sparking hot glances. Cecily would dream of such luxury, her brothels straw a grim echo of Rome's marble. Ancient Egypt's medicine wove magic and herbs, their Ebus papyrus listing 700 cures, from toothaches to heartbreak. Physicians sutured wounds, chanted to Isis, their knives sharp as your quills. Women's health, fertility, contraception was sacred, their Cahoon papyrus echoing Jones nettle tea. Mummification preserved bodies for eternity, natron drying flesh as your lead dries cheeks. Their legacy lingers in your herb vials, your prayers to St. Lucy. In this fish-stinking, sermon-haunted town, sex is a wrestle in the straw, defying mud and priests. Your pigments frame its players. Agnes's blush for her husband's hands, Thomas's kohl for a weaver's glance, Maud's pale cheeks for a tanner's bed she dreads. Privacy's a myth, pleasure a sin, love a contract, yet desire burns, stubborn as pike's purr, stoicism's calm, Rome's steam. Egypt's herbs echo here, reminders that body and soul endure. As you lie on your pallet, embers fading, your quills paint hope, hide shame, frame love, binding the town's heart one face at a time. After delving into the captivating and often eyebrow-raising realm of medieval sexuality, where myths and truths tangled like a knight's armour snagged in a jousting match, let's pivot to a topic that's just as intriguing but far less scandalous: medieval hygiene. Picture yourself wandering through a lively 14th century village where the air hums with the scent of wood smoke, livestock, and a peculiar whiff you'd rather not investigate. Hygiene in those days wasn't about sparkling showers, silky soaps, or minty toothpaste. It was a gritty, practical battle against dirt, disease, and the ever-present fear of divine disapproval. So, pull up a chair, preferably not too close to an open window, and let's embark on a journey into a time when cleanliness was less about godliness and more about sheer survival. If you're enjoying this deep dive into history, give it a like, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is, whether you're sipping morning coffee in New York, munching a late-night snack in Tokyo, or braving a rainy afternoon in London. I love hearing from you. Now, dim the lights, imagine the distant hum of a bustling tavern, and let's step into the surprisingly pungent world of medieval hygiene. In the early Middle Ages, bathing wasn't the risky endeavour it later became. Monks splashed about in monastery bathhouses, and the Roman tradition of soaking in warm, steamy water lingered in parts of Europe like a nostalgic nod to toga-clad spa days. These bathhouses were communal hubs where people scrubbed away the grime of daily life while swapping stories about harvests, miracles, or the latest village drama. Cleanliness for a brief moment wasn't just achievable, it was downright fashionable. Monasteries, with their emphasis on spiritual and physical purity, often had dedicated bathhouses where monks could soak in relative comfort, a far cry from the muddy realities of the outside world. But by the late medieval period, attitudes toward bathing took a dramatic turn. What was once a healthy habit became a dangerous gamble, shrouded in fear, superstition, and a wildly inaccurate understanding of human biology. People believed that hot water opened the body's pores, making them vulnerable to diseases like the plague. Imagine sinking into a warm tub during a deadly outbreak, only to think, "I've just turned myself into a sponge for death." That was the prevailing mindset. Bathing too frequently, they feared, could weaken the body, invite illness, or even provoke God's wrath. Water, far from being a cleansing force, was seen as treacherous, a liquid gateway to sickness and sin. To make matters worse, public bathhouses, once wholesome gathering spots, began to acquire a shady reputation. By the 13th and 14th centuries, many had morphed into medieval party zones, offering far more than just a scrub. Some provided herbal steams, massages, and communal tubs, but others doubled as brothels, serving up scandal alongside soap. The church, ever vigilant for signs of moral decay, wasn't amused. Being naked in hot water, that was practically an open invitation for the devil to join you for a splash. Bathhouses became associated with sin, disease, and debauchery, and when the Black Death swept through Europe, they took the blame. Doctors, lacking knowledge of germs, argued that warm water opened pores to infection, so people boarded up bathhouses, convinced that staying dry was the key to survival. Some were repurposed into bakeries or workshops. Others were abandoned, left to rot, like relics of a cleaner, more optimistic era. But don't picture medieval people as wandering around like mud-caked goblins. They weren't always filthy, they just cleaned themselves differently. Instead of full-body soaks, they relied on sponge baths, using linen cloths soaked in water mixed with herbs like rosemary, lavender, or vinegar to wipe down hands, faces, armpits, and feet, the high-traffic areas, so to speak. These partial washes were quick, practical, and far less risky than a tub of hot water. For most, hygiene meant these modest rituals, paired with a fresh linen shirt and a fervent prayer that nobody noticed the lingering smell. Without germ theory, indoor plumbing, or a basic grasp of microbiology, their approach wasn't lazy. It was a survival strategy, rooted in paranoia, faith, and the harsh realities of their world. Bathhouses had once been the heart of communal cleanliness. In the early Middle Ages, they were vibrant social hubs where monks, merchants, and peasants soaked in warm water, steamed in herbal baths, and cut up on village gossip. These weren't just places to get clean. They were medieval spas, minus the fluffy towels and ambient flute music. Townfolk could relax, scrub away the grime, and feel briefly civilized, all while sharing tubs and stories. Monks in particular valued bathhouses for their alignment with spiritual purity, and some monasteries maintained them for centuries, offering a rare oasis of hygiene in a gritty world. But by the 13th century, bathhouses started to lose their wholesome charm. Some began offering extra services, with attendants who were suspiciously friendly and water that had seen far too many strangers. The line between wellness and wickedness blurred quickly, and the church, always ready to crack down on fun, took notice. Public nudity, even with a scrub brush in hand, was frowned upon. Sexual misconduct was worse, and bathhouses became synonymous with sin, disease, and scandal. When the Black Death arrived, the nail was in the coffin. People, terrified of disease, shut bathhouses down permanently, believing that dry skin was safer than damp pores. The once lively hubs of hygiene were either repurposed or left to decay, a poetic fate for buildings meant to keep society clean. The fear of bathing wasn't just about disease, it was deeply tied to morality. The church preached that nudity, even for hygiene, was a slippery slope to temptation. Hot water was thought to soften not just the body but the soul, inviting sinful thoughts, or worse. So bathing became a rare event, something you might do once a season, or when the smell became so potent it startled the livestock. Instead, people turned to sponge baths, using linen cloths dipped in herbal water or vinegar to clean the essentials. For the wealthy, servants might heat the water and add lavender or sage for a touch of luxury. Peasants boiled water over a fire and made do, often in drafty huts with minimal privacy. Monks, adhering to strict rules, often had better hygiene routines, washing for spiritual as much as physical cleanliness. The goal was universal: stay just clean enough to avoid offending God or scaring your neighbours. Nobles didn't bathe as often as modern folks might expect, but when they did, it was a full-blown production. Servants hauled cauldrons of boiling water to fill wooden tubs lined with linen sheets to prevent splinters. Herbs like lavender, sage, or rosemary were sprinkled in, turning the bath into a fragrant, soupy experience. These tubs were set up in bedrooms or near fireplaces, with privacy being optional depending on your rank or shamelessness. Some couples even shared the water, romantic if you can overlook floating in each other's grime like medieval fondue. The bath was less about hygiene and more about status, a rare indulgence that screamed wealth and leisure. For the poor, bathing was far less glamorous. Rivers, barrels, or any container that held water would do. In winter, hygiene often took a backseat to survival, as freezing temperatures made a dip in the river less appealing than frostbite. Instead, people relied on a strategy best described as act clean and keep moving. A quick wipe with a damp cloth, a fresh linen shirt, and you were presentable enough for church or market. In southern Europe, where warmer weather and better plumbing prevailed, some urban bathhouses survived, offering steam rooms, herbal treatments, and a chance to feel briefly civilized. But even there, you might leave feeling both refreshed and slightly judged by the locals. Hair care was a whole other adventure. Nobody had shampoo, so they got creative with what they had. Lye soap, made from wood ash and animal fat, was a popular choice, capable of cutting through grease and possibly your scalp if used too often. It was harsh, gritty, and smelt like a damp campfire, but it got the job done. For those hoping to preserve their follicles, gentler options included egg yolks, which were slimy but nourishing, or beer, which left you smelling like you'd had a wild night at the tavern. Vinegar infused with rosemary or lavender was a favorite rinse, masking odors and giving hair a polished, fragrant vibe. Washing hair was a chore, and hot water was avoided since it was believed to weaken the brain. Lukewarm water was the sweet spot, assuming you had the fuel to heat it and didn't mind waiting hours for a bucket your sibling hadn't already used. Brushing, however, was a daily ritual. Combs made of bone, wood, or horn were prized possessions, often elaborately carved and passed down through families. They were used to detangle hair and remove lice, a constant nuisance. Noblewomen in particular spent hours braiding, coiling, and veiling their hair, creating elaborate styles that signaled status and beauty. A stray spark from a nearby fireplace could undo all that hard work, so hair care was as much about caution as vanity. Long, well-kept hair was a badge of honor, proof you had the time and resources to care. For men, shorter styles were practical, but even they took pride in a well-groomed mane, combed free of dirt and critters. Dental care was less about achieving a sparkling smile and more about keeping enough teeth to chew your daily bread. Toothbrushes hadn't been invented, so people used linen rags, soaked in abrasive mixtures like salt, crushed mint or burnt rosemary ash to scrub their teeth. The goal wasn't whitening, it was survival. If your breath didn't knock someone over, you were already winning. Chewing sticks, made from twigs of hazel or elm, were the medieval equivalent of a toothbrush. You'd fray one end by chewing until it formed a brush-like texture, then scrub away, organic, compostable, and vaguely bark-flavoured. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. To freshen breath, people chewed fennel seeds, cloves, or cardamom, depending on what they could afford or snag from the spice rack. Wealthier folks might rinse their mouths with vinegar, wine, or even myrrh water, a luxurious touch that screamed sophistication. Some used gritty pastes made from powdered charcoal, crushed eggshells, and honey or oil, which left your mouth feeling sandblasted, but marginally cleaner. Dentists, if you could call them that, were usually barbers moonlighting as tooth pullers. A loose, infected, or annoying tooth, they'd yank it out in a wooden chair with no anesthetic, just a strong grip and a quick prayer. Medieval diets were low in processed sugars, so rural folks often had better teeth than modern snackers, but when rot set in, it was brutal, and divine intervention was the only real cure. The smell of medieval Europe was, to put it mildly, unforgettable. Without sewage systems, deodorant, or widespread bathtubs, cities and villages reeked of sweat, animals, rotting food, and a stubborn optimism that somehow made it bearable. Streets were open sewers, livestock roamed freely, and candle smoke mingled with the stench of whatever the butcher had tossed out. If your nose survived a trip through the fish market or past the tanner's shop, you deserved a medal. So, how did people cope with this olfactory chaos? They got creative. Pomanders, small hollow balls filled with herbs and spices like cloves, cinnamon or lavender, were worn around the neck or tucked into clothing like medieval air fresheners. They didn't purify the air but politely overpowered the filth. Women often sewed scented sachets into their dresses or braided herbs like rosemary or marjoram into their hair, blending hygiene with fashion and a touch of spiritual pest control. Perfume was a luxury for the wealthy, imported from the Middle East or Italy, and made from rose oil or exotic ingredients like civet, extracted from the rear end of a very surprised cat-like animal. Applying it was an art, dabbing, waving, and pretending you weren't just masking the smell of boiled turnips and regret. Body odour was an unavoidable reality. Without deodorant, people turned to tricks like alum powder, a naturally occurring mineral with mild antibacterial properties, to cut down on the stench. Crushed herbs like sage, mint or rosemary were rubbed into armpits, not because they were effective, but because they smelled better than sweat. The logic was simple. If you can't stop the sweat, at least smell like a garden salad. Perfumed handkerchiefs were a noble favourite, held delicately under the nose while navigating crowded, smelly streets. Medieval medicine didn't help matters. Sweating was seen as a healthy way to purge bad humours, so blocking it was considered dangerous. You weren't unclean, you were just medically fragrant. Fashion didn't make things easier. Layers of wool, linen and fur trapped heat and moisture like a mobile greenhouse, turning even the freshest person into a walking sauna. Combine that with open fires, feasting and the occasional plague, and you had a sensory experience worthy of a full-blown evacuation. But everyone was in the same boat, or rather, the same sweaty tunic. The king, the priest, even the woman selling radishes at the market hadn't bathed since the last holy day. Shared suffering made the stench oddly communal, like a badge of medieval life. Linen was the unsung hero of medieval hygiene. Breathable, absorbent, and surprisingly durable, linen undergarments like shirts, shifts, and smocks soaked up sweat and grime, protecting the heavier, harder-to-wash outer layers of wool or fur. Changing your linen was as close to a shower as most people got. A clean white shift signaled you had your life together. A grey, crusty one suggested you were either poor, possessed, or recently resurrected. Women relied on linen shifts to keep their outer gowns fresh, while knights wore linen under their armour to avoid roasting like baked ham during tournaments. Even peasants patched together threadbare linen tunics held together by sheer willpower. Washing linen was no small feat. It involved boiling water, beating the fabric on rocks or wooden boards, and scrubbing with lye or even urine. Yes, urine, valued for its ammonia content to whiten stains. The river was the laundromat, doubling as a sewer, livestock bath, and occasional body disposal site. Clothes were spread on bushes or stretched between trees to dry, giving villagers the charming look of a never-ending yard sale. Clean linen was more than hygiene, it was a social signal. If your shirt was fresh, you were respectable. If it was sprouting mould, well, better luck next wash day. Itching was a universal experience, thanks to lice, fleas, and mites that treated human bodies like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Lice were so common they were practically family members, treated like pesky roommates you couldn't evict. People used fine-toothed combs made of bone or wood to rake them out, a tedious but necessary ritual akin to modern flossing. These combs, often elaborately carved, were as personal as a toothbrush, dragging out lice, eggs, and a good deal of patience. Boiling clothes, or baking them near a fire, could kill the pests, though you risked torching your only tunic in the process. Shaving your head was a drastic but effective solution, especially for monks, though wigs could become lice hotels if not cleaned. Fleas were a relentless scourge in medieval life, turning even the grandest castle into an itchy battlefield. These tiny terrors thrived in the warm, filthy havens of straw mattresses, animal-packed homes, and bustling urban inns, leaping from host to host with infuriating agility. No one was spared, not the lord in his velvet robes, nor the peasant trudging through muddy fields. Unlike today's arsenal of flea collars and chemical sprays, medieval people had to rely on crude, often futile defences. Smoke fumigation was a common tactic. Households would light smouldering fires of green wood or herbs like wormwood, hoping the acrid haze would drive fleas out or suffocate them. Herbal sachets, small cloth bags stuffed with lavender, cedar, or rue, were tucked between bed sheets or strewn across floors, their pungent aromas believed to repel pests. Some swore by specific smells, like garlic or pennyroyal, as flea deterrents, while others clung to the desperate hope that their neighbour's stench might lure the fleas away. Superstitions abounded. Hanging a rabbit's foot above the bed, or sprinkling salt in corners, was thought to ward off the biters. But these remedies were more wishful thinking than effective, and the fleas, undeterred, continued their reign of terror. The real defence was endurance, a grim acceptance that itching was as inevitable as sunrise. Scratching became a universal pastime, practised by kings and scullery maids alike, often in public with little shame. Fleas, like their cousins the lice, were the great equalizers of medieval society, indifferent to wealth, piety, or sobriety. A noblewoman might comb her hair with an ivory tool, while a shepherd used a stick, but both were united in their war against the same crawling foe. Entire families would huddle by the hearth, picking fleas from each other's clothes in a ritual as social as it was practical. Bedding was shaken out daily, though straw mattresses, cheap, warm, and flea-friendly, were rarely replaced, ensuring a fresh crop of biters each night. In wealthier homes, servants might beat rugs or air linens in the courtyard, but even these efforts were a drop in the bucket against the flea onslaught. The constant irritation shaped daily life. Sleep was broken by bites, tempers frayed from the relentless itch, and even prayer could be interrupted by a frantic scratch. Yet, medieval people soldiered on, their resilience forged in a world where discomfort was a constant companion. Medieval sanitation, particularly when it came to toilets, was a study in creative improvisation and grim necessity. In castles, garderobes were the pinnacle of luxury. Cold stone benches perched over holes that funneled waste into moats, cesspits, or an unfortunate patch of ground below. Often tucked high in towers or jutting out from walls, they offered a semblance of privacy and the exhilarating pull of gravity, though the stench rising from below could make even the stoutest knight wince. The unlucky souls tasked with cleaning these pits, known as gong firmers, waded through filth for a pittance, their work as vital as it was reviled. Poorly aimed waste could splatter castle grounds or drift into water supplies, a hygiene hazard no one fully understood. For those lingering near the castle walls, a sudden shower of refuse was a real risk, teaching them to tread lightly or carry a wide-brimmed hat. Peasants, lacking such architectural marvels, made do with nature's facilities. Woods, rivers, or communal pits served as open-air latrines, offering zero privacy and plenty of camaraderie. A farmer might squat beside a neighbour, discussing crop yields or the village priest's latest sermon, as if the setting were a tavern rather than a ditch. These pits, shared by entire communities, were rarely maintained, becoming festering pools of disease and odour. In winter, the frozen ground turned a simple task into a shivering ordeal, while summer brought swarms of flies and a stench that could curl hair. For nighttime relief, chamber pots were the unsung heroes, ceramic or metal bowls stashed under beds, ready to catch contributions in the dark. Their contents were emptied at dawn, often with a shouted, "Garloo, beware the water!" as they were flung from windows into streets below. Accuracy was optional, and pedestrians learned to dodge or curse their luck. In crowded cities, this practice turned alleys into open sewers, where waste mingled with mud and market scraps, creating a slick, fragrant obstacle course. Toilet paper was a distant dream, so medieval people improvised with whatever was at hand. Rags were the go-to for those with means, washed and reused in a cycle of grim efficiency. Peasants relied on moss, straw or leaves, scratchy but abundant, while the truly desperate used their hands, a practice as common as it was unspoken. In wealthier households, scraps of wool or linen offered a touch of dignity, though they were still a far cry from modern comforts. In winter, some resorted to snow, a bracing, bone-chilling experience that made every trip to the latrine a test of fortitude. Monasteries, with their strict rules, often provided shared latrines and hand-washing basins, a rare nod to hygiene in a world that prioritized survival over sanitation. Cities attempted to manage waste with gutters or central ditches, but these frequently clogged, overflowed, or fermented into neighborhood landmarks. Stray pigs, rooting through streets, acted as unofficial cleanup crews, devouring whatever hit the ground. It wasn't a system of elegance or efficiency, but it functioned, barely, by the loose standards of the time. Contrary to their reputation as wallowers in filth, medieval people weren't entirely clueless about hygiene. They developed practical systems to cope with their grimy reality. Linen undergarments soaked up sweat, vinegar rinses doubled as cleansers, and fine-toothed lice combs kept infestations at bay. Rituals like sponge baths before church or boiling laundry under a full moon weren't just chores, they were acts of defiance against a world that conspired to make you stink. These practices weren't rooted in science, but in necessity, shaped by fear of disease, faith in divine approval, and the practical limits of cold winters and scarce fuel. Clean clothes were a badge of virtue, signalling respectability in a society where appearances mattered. Shiny hair, or at least hair that didn't crawl, showed discipline, while avoiding the reek of rot was basic courtesy. Hygiene was less about personal comfort and more about social standing, a way to prove you weren't a walking plague risk despite the odds. Some medieval hygiene practices were surprisingly clever, even if their benefits were accidental. Linen shifts, changed regularly, acted as a barrier between body and outer garments, keeping costly wool or fur fresher longer, a practical win in an era before dry cleaning. Vinegar and herbal rinses like rosemire or chamomile had mild antibacterial properties, a stroke of luck in a germ-ignorant world. Communal bathhouses, before their scandalous decline, fostered both cleanliness and community, offering a rare chance to scrub away grime and gossip with neighbours. Even the habit of airing bedding or beating rugs, though futile against fleas, reduced dust and dampness, making homes marginally healthier. These small victories show a society groping toward cleanliness, even if their methods were hit or miss. But let's not romanticize it. Medieval life was smelly, itchy, and often gross. People scratched incessantly, shared bathwater with strangers, and swapped lice-like trading cards. Medical advice was as likely to kill as cure, with physicians preaching the virtues of sweat while warning against baths. Yet, despite the filth, many lived to see grey hair or a second harvest, their bodies tougher than the plagues and pests that stalked them. Their world was a sensory assault, fluid, messy, and reeking of everything from manure to mead, but it was theirs, and they navigated it with a blend of ingenuity, faith, and sheer stubbornness. They turned vinegar into deodorant, linen into a shield, and endurance into a lifestyle. So, the next time you grimace at the thought of medieval hygiene, give them some credit. They lacked showers, soap that didn't scald, or the faintest hint of germ theory. But they had grit and resourcefulness in spades. They faced a world of fleas, fetid streets, and freezing latrines with a resilience that borders on heroic. Their lives were a constant negotiation with dirt and discomfort, yet they found ways to carve out dignity, whether through a fresh linen shift or a combed scalp. Medieval hygiene wasn't pretty, but it was a testament to human tenacity, a stubborn refusal to let the itch, the stink, or the muck win. As we draw the curtain on our vivid exploration of medieval life, we've peeled back the layers of a world that was equal parts brutal, ingenious, and unapologetically human. Barbers, far from mere hair trimmers, were the unsung daredevils of their time, wielding razors and lancets in dimly lit shops, pulling teeth, amputating limbs, and stitching wounds without the faintest clue about germs or anesthesia. Theirs was a bloody high-stakes craft, where a slip of the blade could mean life or death, yet they carried on, fueled by necessity and a grim sense of duty. Those who crafted beauty, medieval makeup artists of sorts, faced their own perilous dance, smearing lead-laced creams and crushed beetle blush onto noble faces, chasing an ideal of radiance while unknowingly poisoning themselves and their clients in the name of vanity. Sexuality, meanwhile, was a complex tapestry woven from church edicts, whispered taboos, and raw desire, unfolding in the secrecy of haylofts, the scandal of bathhouses, and the quiet rebellion of everyday life. A reminder that even under scrutiny, human passion found a way to burn. And hygiene? It was a relentless struggle against a world of dirt, disease, and superstition, fought with vinegar-soaked rags, linen shifts, and the faint hope of dodging the plague's deadly grasp. Sponge baths replaced soaks, and clean clothes became a badge of respectability in a society where stench was as common as sunrise. Together, these four facets paint a portrait of a medieval existence that was raw, unforgiving, and often odorous, yet brimming with resilience and resourcefulness. Barbers, beauticians, lovers, and survivors each played their part in a society where every day was a gamble against infection, judgment, or divine displeasure. They navigated their roles with a tenacity that speaks across centuries, turning linen into armor, herbs into hope, and sheer willpower into a shield against the chaos of their world. This wasn't a time of ease or enlightenment, but one of stubborn endurance, where people scratched out moments of dignity, beauty, and connection amid the muck. Their lives, messy and marred as they were, remind us of humanity's unbreakable spirit, capable of thriving in the grimiest corners of history, of finding ways to laugh, love, and carry on, even when the air was thick with the scent of livestock and the shadow of the plague loomed large. The medieval world may have been a far cry from our own, but its people, with their grit and gumption, feel achingly familiar, soldiering through the sweat, the itch, and the uncertainty to leave a legacy of survival that still resonates today.